Larissa here from the Templin Institute. We'd like to thank EckhartsLadder for featuring us on his incredible channel. Be sure to head on over to the Templin Institute after this video for Eckhart's analysis of post-Endor eras of imperial power, and to find out how you can participate in our Extra Life charity event. For 28 years, the United Nations Space Command fought a seemingly unwinnable war against the Covenant. For the entirety of the conflict, the UNSC struggled to overcome the significant technological disparity that left their forces hopelessly outmatched in nearly every engagement. During planetary campaigns, specialized doctrines and strategies could help neutralize many of the Covenant's most decisive advantages, and UNSC ground forces were able to fight on almost even terms. In space, however, no such solution was ever achieved. Every day of the war, ships and sailors went into battle knowing full well that the odds were against them, but they pressed forward all the same. When a miraculous victory against the Covenant was finally achieved, there can be no doubt that mankind's victory was paid for in blood by the valiant efforts and sacrifice of the UNSC Navy. Formed just before the outset of the Interplanetary War in 2163, the UNSC Navy's first responsibility was to escort and deploy Marine forces across the solar system. After the destruction of the last Kozlovic and Friedan rebels, the Navy transitioned into a largely anti-piracy force in support of the rapidly expanding colonization efforts. Low-intensity conflicts remained the Navy's primary focus until, in 2194, a growing coalition of insurrectionists began threatening the outer colonies of the frontier. Over the ensuing decade, the UNSC Navy fought a series of skirmishes against makeshift rebel forces, culminating in major campaigns such as Operations Trebuchet and Charlemagne. As the first example of large-scale orbital warfare in centuries, the campaigns against the insurrectionists helped propel a massive reassessment of naval doctrine, and spurred and incited several critical advances in technology and strategy. When the Covenant embarked on their genocidal crusade against humanity in 2525, the UNSC was in the midst of a substantial rearmament program. The Navy had expanded to several thousand warships equipped with newly introduced magnetic accelerator cannons, titanium A armor, and most importantly, new tactics in ship-to-ship warfare. Despite these advancements, the UNSC underwent a streak of horrific losses. Pyrrhic victories and outright massacres defined the campaigns in the outer colonies, with only an overwhelming numerical superiority ensuring victory. The first truly decisive UNSC victory was achieved in 2543 at the cost of one of its most brilliant naval commanders. At the Battle of Sci Serpentis, Admiral Preston Cole instigated a cataclysmic reaction that briefly turned the gas giant Viperidae into a brown dwarf. The ensuing eruption annihilated hundreds of Covenant warships, alongside Cole himself. This victory was not enough to save the outer colonies, however, and by the 2550s, the Covenant had advanced into the inner colonies, the heart of the UNSC's industry and economy. Another decisive victory was scored by the UNSC Navy at Sigma Octanus IV, but it was quickly overshadowed by the calamitous losses at Tribute and Reach, the UNSC's most critical shipbuilding and military hub. By 2552, Earth itself was threatened, and the majority of the Navy's remaining warships were destroyed in the ensuing battle for control of the planet. In the aftermath of their unexpected victory over the Covenant, the UNSC Navy, now reduced to a few hundred vessels, recalled the majority of its warships back to the Sol system. With the threat of another large-scale conflict reduced, the Navy was able to repair and refit its vessels and embark on a second massive rearmament program. Covenant and Forerunner technology reverse-engineered over the course of the war led to a massive leap in warship design, culminating in the newly introduced Autumn-class heavy cruiser and later the Infinity-class supercarrier. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, the Navy has been given the time necessary to restore its status as the chief military branch of the UNSC. At the forefront of this effort is the Chief of Naval Operations, Fleet Admiral Lord Terence Hood, who oversees UNSC Naval Command, or NAVCOM. NAVCOM is divided between 3 separate commands: Fleet Command, which oversees ships' deployment and operations; Logistical Operations Command, which is responsible for the construction, maintenance, and distribution of supplies and material; and Naval Special Warfare Command, which operates the myriad of special forces present within the Navy, most notably those within the Spartan program. Areas of responsibility are defined by central commands, which each preside over a region of UNSC territory. Such territories are further divided, governed or protected by various fleet command sectors, typically based around planetary systems of particular strategic importance. UNSC warships are divided into a number of fleets: system defense fleets centered around a specific world or system, and expeditionary fleets, which serve as a rapid reaction force. Such formations are further divided into battle groups or task forces, while single ships are typically relegated to peacetime patrols throughout friendly territory. The heavy losses suffered by the UNSC Navy during the war against the Covenant mean that many of its fleets and other formations exist only on paper, with ad hoc flotillas conducting the majority of the Navy's operations, until such time they can be fully reinforced. The majority of UNSC warships are frigates, the traditional multi-purpose workhorse of the Navy. As rearmament has progressed, larger destroyers, cruisers, and carriers have slowly been reintroduced, after being a rare sight in the UNSC during the final years of the war. These are supported by wings of aerospace fighters, dropships, and support ships, with most larger UNSC vessels carrying squadrons of these smaller craft. In addition to its warships, the Navy is also responsible for the operation of a wide variety of orbital stations and defense platforms. These include mobile medical stations, refit and repair facilities, dry docks, and remote scanning outposts. A number of maritime vessels are also utilized by the UNSC, although these are typically unmanned platforms for drones rather than fully crewed warships. The most secretive and controversial element of the UNSC Navy remains the Office of Naval Intelligence, or ONI. While ostensibly an information gathering and analysis division operating within the confines of NAVCOM, the conflict against the insurrectionists and later the Covenant transformed ONI into the principal military intelligence and security agency of the UNSC. Its clandestine operations typically allow it to operate outside the formal chain of command, and the agency even maintains its own fleet of warships, ranging from smaller stealth corvettes to even cruisers and deep space stations. During the height of the Human Covenant War, the Office of Naval Intelligence was almost solely responsible for the dissemination of information across the UNSC, concealing certain information from the public and promoting its own narratives. While some might argue the need for ONI or even the UNSC Navy might have been diminished by the collapse of the Covenant, in many ways the galaxy is more dangerous than ever. Various splinter states and warlords that constitute the remnants of the Covenant all maneuver for power, and while some wish to coexist peacefully with the UNSC, others see the work of their martyred prophets as unfulfilled. But whatever threats may yet await humanity, they will be met by the ships and sailors of the UNSC Navy.
Thank you to the Templin Institute for that comprehensive breakdown of the UNSC Navy. Now, if you haven't already, head over to their channel and check out my video on the post-Endor eras of Imperial power. The Templin Institute have also announced a 12-hour live stream as part of Extra Life. They'll be streaming Stellaris, BSG Deadlock, and playing games with the community, all to raise money for a really great cause, the San Jorge Children's Foundation, which helps Puerto Rican children and families affected by Hurricane Hurricane Maria. Links to all of that in the description, but again, also make sure you check out their video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, this has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.